Tonight we conclude our special week-long series, We the People, focusing on the fastest-growing minority group in the nation, Hispanics. And in many households, one of the crucial conversations is about keeping the Spanish language alive.
We want our children to understand who we are.
Be seated.
Her son Ralph grew up to be a circuit court judge, the first Hispanic elected to the bench in his county. Their culture and cuisine, their politics and their passions. Hispanics are woven into every corner of the nation's tapestry and everywhere in between. Across the country, the numbers tell the story. Hispanics represent about 1 out of every 2 people added to the population. The changing face of America that is also very familiar. Lee Cowan, NBC News, Waukesha, Wisconsin.
For decades, Hollywood's depiction of Latinos was marred with stereotypes and misconceptions. The idea of the trigger-happy outlaw Mexican gangster was the norm in American cinema, and sadly, those stereotypes were often reinforced by some of their own. From Cantinflas to Carmen Miranda, Latinos were often pigeonholed as the exotic bon vivants from south of the border.
Trabajando duro, tu familia puede triunfar. Que si te enfermas, tengas un seguro médico. Que nuestros hijos puedan recibir una buena educación, sean ricos o pobres. Este es el sueño americano.
People always ask me, why are you Puerto Ricans so damn proud? Well, when your paradise is invaded and turned into a slum.
People were taken out from their land by the big corporation.
Your men are shipped away as cheap farm labor.
It was perfect. They were U.S. citizens and they spoke Spanish. They couldn't complain.
Your women sterilized as a matter of U.S. policy, while your homeland becomes a toxic testing ground for a country that will let you die for their president, but not vote for him.
After 60 long years of abuse and environmental degradation, we are saying enough.
I'm going to Nassau Community College. They've named it Homeless to Hollywood. I've never been homeless. I have no idea where they got that. They do that to us colored folks, you know. But no one's ever told Brad Pitt he was homeless to Hollywood.
And learn how to speak English.
I speak English just fine.
You do, but these people don't.
I talk English and what?
No.
I'm sorry, y'all.
Why am I upset?
Yeah, I just don't understand.
Okay. I went to Lowe's today, and the cashier was speaking Spanish. I particularly don't enjoy speaking Spanish in my country.
One of my early experiences is the teacher asked me to stand up in front of the room and talk about the lions and tigers and snakes in Puerto Rico. So who am I to argue with the teacher? I stood up, and I was a barefoot boy but with a lot of cheek, you know. I got up and I talked about the lions and the tigers and the snakes in Puerto Rico. I made it up. But, you know, we were seen as savages. We came from the jungle. I came in 1922 when I was 5 1/2. And I arrived in April and I started school in September. And Puerto Ricans did not exist in New York in those days. What I mean by that is nobody knew what a Puerto Rican was. And we would be asked, what are you? And we would have to say, we're Spaniards, because they wouldn't know what Puerto Rico was.
And how about a...
We should think about the education of children in this country, whether they're from here or they're not from here. The more we educate children, the more we'll be able to advance the entire planet. So come on, let's think about it. Education is for everyone, no matter from where you're from.
Yo soy mexicano.
You like music? Good. Yeah, how about a Chicano for a neighbor? Liven up the neighborhood.
When I play music, I'm thinking of my daughters most of the times. One is 8, the other one's 14. And I try to think of their hands or their feet, things that are very pure, their eyes. There's nothing more powerful in this planet than innocence and purity. Nothing. I used to go to the store in San Diego, and I would just drool, you know, watching these guitars, you know, like Fender guitars, and, you know, and some people drool for whatever, and I would just look at them and drool like, man, I wonder what does it sound like, and what does it feel like, you know? And all of a sudden I heard, hey, you fucking chili beanie pancho villa motherfucker, you. And I was a little kid, so I turned around and I said, they must not be talking to me. I wonder who they're talking to. And that was the first time I actually felt the sting of racism.
My name is Facundo Morales II. Some of you may know me as the Barrio Tiger. I am the illegitimate son of Tupac Amaru, Pancho Villa, Doña Flor, Pedro Navaja, Sor Juana, and Speedy Gonzalez. Hey, guys. Now, these terms, Hispanic, Latino, you know, they can be misleading because they lump a whole lot of very different people into one category.
We're black, we're white, we're brown, we're red, we're Asian.
Guatemalans are completely different than people from Brazil. You know, Argentinians are completely different from Puerto Ricans. And this idea of lumping together, who wants to be lumped together? I mean, it's like you don't say, oh, you're European.
The minority population of the United States is now 100 million, according to estimates just released by the Census Bureau. 1/3 of the country. The largest minority, Hispanics, 44 million. The fastest growing minority, Hispanics, over 25% increase since 2000. The growth in the Hispanic population can mean two different things politically. More Democratic voters, but also a backlash against illegal immigrants. The backlash is already having an impact on the Republican presidential race, where candidates have been feeling pressure to take a tougher line on illegal immigration.
And get the hint here, there's conversions happening on this issue also.
Which reaction predominates depends on the state. Two groups of states have had higher than average Hispanic population growth. One is states in the interior West like Arizona, Nevada, and Colorado. They already have large Hispanic populations. Hispanic voting power could help tilt those Bush states into the Democratic column with less risk of backlash.
People are more accustomed to having immigrants, work with them, see them on the streets, see them in the stores. Here, I think maybe a new immigration compromise will be embraced.
Some Midwestern, Southern, and Northeastern states also have seen higher than average Hispanic increases, including politically potent states like Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina. Despite the increases, those states still have very low Hispanic populations, with higher proportions of illegal immigrants. In those states, Hispanic empowerment is still a long way off, but the risk of backlash is greater.
In those states, I think the new immigration, the more open immigration, will be a tougher sell for that population and may not go down very well.
Latinos are so numerous that they're changing the pattern of history.
Our people have been used as an organizing tactic.
I think that the recipe for political impotence among Latinos is to be written off by one party and taken for granted by another.
My family was my biggest motivation because I'm the youngest of 10 children, and so I actually had the opportunity to see not necessarily just the sacrifice that my mother and father had put forth, but I actually saw the sacrifice that my older brothers and sisters had to go through, and like how my brothers like dropped out of high school because they lived in Mexico at the time and you had to pay for all education. And they actually dropped out of high school so that they could work, so that they could pay for me and my sisters, like younger siblings, to actually get an education. And I always felt that, you know, they sacrificed their lives for me, so I want to pursue a higher education, and I want to succeed, because if they were willing to put their lives on hold for me, I should be willing to give it my all to give something back to them. For me, my culture shock was actually within my own Latino community, because I realized that people from Florida are very different from people in Texas, and people from Texas are very different from people in Ohio. And depending on whether you were actually born in Mexico or if you were born and raised here as, like, you know, with your Latin culture, I realized that we all have very different takes on life, and we all have very different perspectives. And to me, my culture shock was actually like embracing like the diversity within the own Latino community.
I picked up like both cultures, like American culture and Mexican culture at the same time. So, and then when I came to Ohio State, I met more Hispanic people. I joined the organization. It's more Hispanic students that does it, and that they made me more comfortable being here, because I felt like I was in a family, not just like, oh yeah, I'm just hanging out with white people. No, but I'm hanging out with both at the same time.
I'm from Texas, so I have a tendency to speak English and Spanish at the same time, and it freaks people out because they think I'm speaking about them. That was really one of my major things that I had to acknowledge that I was doing, was speaking both languages at the same time.
But I like to embrace myself as a Hispanic and as a Mexican, so if I can share both identities at the same time with different people, then I'll take that opportunity. And I like to share who I am and what I am to other people. So
I was so used to eating with with tortillas. Even when I got here, like I kind of felt odd eating with a fork, and just having to pick up on those very small details that everybody else is a part of their daily lives. I realized that I did grow up very distinct from other people, and yet even though I grew up very distinct, it wasn't that I couldn't immerse myself in this community and still keep true to my own cultural roots. There's a lot of like restaurants, a lot of stores that offer like cultural foods, and there's dances, like bandas, just different groups coming from different parts of Latin America.
One of the differences between Hispanics and other immigrations is that Hispanic immigration receives a constant influx of immigrants, which maintains alive the culture and the language. The language is maintained alive more so when the family lives in a Hispanic enclave, such as Miami or San Antonio, Texas, or other parts of the country where Hispanics are the predominant majority. One of the variables that's very important is whether Hispanicism is denigrated or it's something of value. If it's something of value, the family is more likely to keep the Spanish language as a hallmark of Hispanicism. But if the Hispanic family lives in a part of the United States where being Hispanic is a denigrated part of the self, that person or that family is more likely to let go of the culture and push to become more acculturated into the United States. One of the phenomena of acculturation is that children have more plasticity. They learn the language quicker. So when the child learns a language quicker, sometimes they have to translate for their parents because the parents are not fluent in the English language yet. The child may jump ahead of the parent and become more fluent in the English language. What the research in language acquisition shows is that children who are bilingual take a little bit longer to start speaking and a little bit longer to dominate both languages. However, the research also shows that learning two languages enhances intellectual capacity. So it opens the brain for a wider amount of learning because you're exercising the brain in ways that would not be exercised if you were only speaking one language. When Hispanics immigrate to the United States, the American culture changes the Hispanic immigrant, but the Hispanic immigrant also changes the culture and creates a change in the community, and this leads to a process of interculturation. So there's not only acculturation on the part of the immigrant, but the immigrant will also change the community that receives them.
These people are preparing for an important step, admission to citizenship. Here, they come to testify to their fitness to become once and for all a part of the United States of America. Longs the promise of long ago. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door.